Hey everybody, it's another week, which means another episode of Hollywood Unhinged featuring your boy, K Bizzle. How you guys doing this week? I am recovering from a crazy week of nonstop entertainment. You know, when people say to me all the time, it's so expensive to live in LA. How do you do it? Like, how do you get around? Gas is $7 a gallon. Don't you miss living back in the Midwest or where it's affordable or whatnot? Well, yeah. Yeah, sure, I could live in Pittsburgh or Cleveland or Detroit where my money would go a lot further. But would I ever be invited to the Beach Festival, which was over at Beach Fest in Redondo Beach? My friend Paul, who works over at iHeartRadio, got me some tickets where I was blessed to take my brother and my friend Julia Goldberg to the Beach Fest. And we saw Joan, Jett. We saw Slightly Stupid. Ben Harper was playing. We saw Switchfoot. For all you 90s rock fans, that was you probably remember them. Who else was on it? The headliner that night was The Offspring, which I am not a big fan of. So we left before that. But I tell you this because there's 30,000 people in Redondo Beach. It's a beautiful day. We had our own cabana. We had our own waitress, a cute little Filipino bartender. It was a blast. Great parking, great time. Then what comes to town? The Netflix is a Joke Festival, which if you don't live in LA and you have no idea what that means, imagine the Super Bowl of comedy coming to your town, where not just a couple events, not just even a couple events each night. I'm talking about probably over 150 different events spread out over 8 days. And, the last time this happened here was 2 years ago. I think it takes every 2 years because it takes 2 years to recover for most of these comics from all the partying. But for those of you guys who know, I love to hang out on the Sunset Strip at the Comedy Store. I got lots of friends down there. And by the way, they should all be commended on what a great job they did, because I've never seen that place as packed as it was during the Netflix as a Joke Festival. I remember a couple years ago when Rogan was still there, they would have these nights where Sam Tripoli would do the Comedy Chaos shows, and he would do an 8 o'clock show and a 10 o'clock show. And when I tell you, Joe Rogan and the power of Joe Rogan sold out all those shows. Where the place was so packed. This was on par with 2010, 2012 Comedy Store. One night, I get a phone call from my buddy, Too Short. Those of you guys know him as the rapper from Oakland, the king of Oakland, if you will, the king of the Bay. He tells me he's finishing up in a little bit at the Troubadour. He hangs out and has jumped up on stage with our homie, Craig Robinson, who many of you guys probably know him from all his movies and more famously, probably The Office. He was Daryl on The Office. But he's also the most talented musician and funny comic. And what Craig does is Craig goes up on stage with a keyboard sometimes, and then he'll do songs. And he usually opens up his set with Edelweiss, sung very high, and soprano, which is very funny watching coming out of a brother, from Chicago like Craig. But every now and then he does a special show where it's Craig Robinson and the Tasty Delicious, which is his backup band. And they're a funk band through and through. So a few weeks back, Short and I had gone to the Comedy Store, and we bumped into Craig in the back hallway. And Craig was like, "You think Short will fuck with me tonight?" And I'm like, "Fuck with you how?" He's like, "You think he'll come on stage and do Blow the Whistle?" And I said, "Of course." Now, unbeknownst to me, he'd already done this a couple times with Craig. And that night, in the original room, he went up on stage and blew the place down. I was surprised that so many tourists even knew who Too Short was. But the minute he said, "What's my favorite word?" the whole original room stood up and yelled, "Biatch!" So the other night, he was finishing up at the Troubadour. The place was packed. And again, all the roasters for the Kevin Hart roast are all at different venues in the 2 weeks leading up to the roast. They do this because they're testing out the jokes. They have all these writers, and a lot of them wrote their own stuff, but guys like Jeff Ross and Tony Hinchcliffe, they'll go up, or Chelsea Handler, they'll all go up and test out their jokes. So when Short finally got done and he headed over to the Comedy Store, I said, "Look, man, it's going to be pretty packed." but I'm sure we could get in. You're too short, you know. And they're always friendly with me and with Todd. Too short. So he shows up with two friends, and we get in. And 2 seconds after we go up the driveway, I see Kevin Hart pull in with his wife in a little Ferrari. I've never seen this model Ferrari before in my life. Cool. I bump into my friend Jeff Ross. We fist bump. I get our wristbands. We go in, and we look in the original room. There's not a seat. Not a seat to be had. And at that point, I believe Matt Rife was just bringing up Kevin Hart. You're talking about two of the biggest comedians in the world right there, right? In a room that holds a couple hundred people, tops, maybe 150. I peeped my head in there. There's no seats. There's people everywhere you look. We then walk down to the main room. I peep my head in there. There's Mark Normand on stage. And I look at the set list, and everybody and their brother and sister are slated to go up. Chelsea Handler, who else was there? Big J. Okerson, everybody. I tell Short, hey man, it's not looking good. We don't have seats. And of course, Short was a little dismayed. But I said, brother, there's nothing we can do. The place has been sold out for months, if not a year. He was frustrated. I was a little frustrated. But again, to me, there's no better hang on Sunset or in LA than the Comedy Store. If you've never been there, it's in the middle of the Strip. And it has a patio out front where you can literally people watch. People walking down Sunset, people coming into the place. 1 minute you turn, there's Shaquille O'Neal. He was there the other night. It's just all star-studded. Everybody that was in town for the festival would pop in. Now, there were a couple nights I missed where Louis C.K., Chappelle, and those other guys came. But again, you get the world's worst case of FOMO living in Southern California. This is what I'm getting to with my point. I know I'm being long-winded, but this stuff doesn't happen in the Midwest. It doesn't happen in Phoenix or Las Vegas. Maybe Las Vegas, but still, not with the hookups I have. So as I'm hanging out at the store, this was a life's full circle moment. And I'll tell you why. So I'm lucky enough that after Short left with his friends, by the way, they ended up meeting up with Chappelle at his little private event that he had going on in a small club in the middle of Hollywood. Not only did he have Bill Burr and a bunch of other major comics pop up that night, he had the Black Eyed Peas, he had Busta Rhymes, he had Mos Def and Talib Kweli, which are known as Dark Star. And I guess it turned into Black Eyed Peas. It turned into this real hip-hop cypher that night. Really cool. Again, I missed out. It's fine, because I ended up in Sacred Ground. Sacred Ground is an area that is, I guess you could call it the backstage area, but it's really more of an exclusive area that only the comedians get to hang out in. They've actually, through the years, more and more people have infiltrated the Sacred Ground that probably shouldn't be there, but they're there. But in this particular night, I look over and I see my friend Annie Lederman, the comic, and she's talking with Chelsea Handler. And I'm like, wow, this is a full circle moment. Now, why is it a full circle moment? I had Chelsea Handler's sex tape 15 years ago. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a sex tape. And many years ago, my good friend Sam Tripoli had hit me up and he said, hey, by the way, KB, I know you're the celebrity sex tape guy. If you ever come across a sex tape of Chelsea Handler that I heard is out there, I heard she's getting banged on a washer and dryer, and it was a mistake, and she sent this thing out by accident to a bunch of comedy buyers and bookers for festivals. And I said, well, Sam, it's not really that easy. I can't really control what gets shopped to me or how it gets shopped to me. But if I do ever come across a Chelsea Handler tape, you'll be the first one to know. Lo and behold, 6 months go by, and I get approached with a tape. Guy calls me up, and he is a writer. I think he told me he was a sports writer, but he wrote either for ESPN or some sports show that was on TV. And he tells me that he's flipping through the channels one night, late night, and he gets past the E channel. And he sees this woman hosting a show with a midget and a bunch of panelists on it. The midget was Chewy, if you guys remember Chelsea lately. This was the jump off for her. She had comics like Heather McDonald and Josh Wolf and Chewy and all these people all got their starts on her show. She's an OG. Anyway, I'm told to look out for this tape. This tape comes to me from this writer. He tells me that she was the waitress that used to wait on him at this cafe off of Montana and Santa Monica. And I said, okay, so how did you get a tape like this? And she said she found out that I worked in television and I was a writer. And she handed me a VHS tape. Now, kids, a VHS tape used to be a tape about this big, and you would put it into a VCR, right? That would play the tape. Well, one of the things about a VHS tape was if you didn't poke out the back of the tape, there was a little, I don't know what you would call it, it was a tab, right? So if you would lift up and break the tab off the back of the VHS tape, it would be unable to re-record over. One of the biggest problems with tape, whether it was an audio cassette or a videotape, was that if you weren't careful or if you left the VHS tape in your VCR and you went to go tape your favorite show that week, you could tape over something that was very important, like your bar mitzvah, like a bris, like any kind of birthday party you wanted to hold on to. In this particular case, she had given a demo tape to this writer, and it's her in her kitchen with a visor on, looking very cute, mind you. And she's doing a whole shtick about being a waitress at this place. It's called the Blue Plate. And she's talking about these horrible customers that would come in and talk about the lettuce being too green or the gravy's too brown or whatever. It was a horrible, horrible bit. But in the middle of it, it switches to her getting banged from behind and her big boobs flopping and hitting next to each other. And she's getting hit doggy style. The camera's placed right on the nightstand, focused on her boobs and her face. And then all of a sudden, it stops and you hear the guy come and he goes, "Oh, did you get the cum shot, love?" In this British accent. And she makes this old face, and then it goes right back into her doing her stand-up in her kitchen. Like it never even existed. And I'm like, holy shit. So how and why now? This was like 10 years after she had started this TV show. He said, I'm flipping through the channels and I see this woman. And I remembered that she'd given me a tape that I put in a box in my office. I went through the box, I found the tape, I put it in, and when I saw that there was a sex tape, of course I had to Google you. I Googled celebrity sex tapes and your face popped up, and that's how we ended up talking. Well, at that point I had to explain to him it's not worth the kind of money you think it's worth because she's not behind it. She's not going to sign off on it. So be that as it may, I think I ended up selling the story to the National Enquirer because that's really all it was worth. She was really smart, and I'll tell you why she was smart. She came up with the story that she did it on purpose. Okay, she put that in there so she would get noticed and that people would talk about it. This is before anything was ever called viral. This is really kind of pre the internet being really what it is today. Back then, you know, there were big websites like TMZ and National Enquirer, whatever, AMI, Radar Online. But, you know, people just, Pornhub didn't exist. You know, porn was becoming mainstream, but not like it is today with OnlyFans and the webcam companies and all that stuff. So I digress and just say, you know, your boy can't be within 5 feet of Chelsea Handler, and his big mouth has to approach her and say, "Hey, Chelsea, it's really nice to meet you. My name is Kevin Blatt. My friends call me KB." And she says, "Hi, KB, how are you?" And I'm like, "Nice to see you. You look wonderful." "Oh, thank you for the compliment." She does look very good. You know, about as good as a 52-year-old woman's going to look with all the plastic surgery and filler that she's had. I don't even know if it's plastic surgery. I think it's more filler. But I said, you know, you and I, our lives kind of intertwined for a minute 15 years ago. And she's like, "How so?" I said, "Well, we didn't sleep together, so don't get worried. But I did have your sex tape. So we didn't sleep together, but I did see your titties." And she laughed. And then I said, "I have questions," because I really doubted this guy's story from the get-go, but I would love to know. And I told her my story. I said, "Just send it to you." And she said, "That's exactly right. I came out and said that I did it on purpose. I didn't. Obviously, it was a fuck-up." And I looked at her and I said, "Let me just stop you right there. Brilliant. brilliant PR move on your part. Because the minute you copped to it and said that you did it on purpose, the story went away. It died. Nobody tried extorting her. Nobody tried to shake her down for money. If I remember correctly, though, I think I had a lawyer approach her about acquiring her copyright to see if she wanted it. I still knew that there was a British guy involved that would have to sign off on it too, but we knew that wasn't going to happen, and I knew she wasn't going to sign off on 5 seconds of getting banged on a tape. So that was really a full circle moment, which, by the way, if you watched the Kevin Hart roast the other night, there was a sex tape joke about Chelsea Handler. There was also a couple jokes about Kevin Hart and his affair in Vegas. Well, again, another full circle moment for your boy KB over here. Even though I had signed an NDA and was not supposed to talk about it, my name did get thrown into an LA Times article and became public record. Several years ago, Kevin Hart was caught cheating on his very pregnant wife at the time. He had chartered a jet and flew out to Vegas with his boys for a boys' weekend. And during the time where he was partying with his boys, somebody had put a prepaid track phone in the corner of the room, and it was set up to tape him fucking a bunch of chicks, right? One in particular, her name was Montia, and it got shopped to me well, it didn't really get shopped to me. I had a law firm that I worked with that told me that they had a client that had a problem, and they wanted me to step in as a decoy. Because I'm the celebrity sex tape guy, it would make more sense for me to approach this person to see if I could buy it back. And when I did approach the email address and sent an email, they bit and said they wanted $15 million in Bitcoin. And I was like, are you out of your goddamn mind? Like, are you watching movies? Because this doesn't happen in today's day and age. You don't do Bitcoin deals for $15 million. There's no tape, by the way, that's ever sold for $15 million. Even the Paris and Kim Kardashian, they got $1 million up front. They got to share the back end, but that's a different story for another day. I talked to this woman ad nauseum. Maybe a week went by, back and forth. I'm flirting with her. I'm doing whatever I can. And again, they're telling me that this woman's name is Montia. She set him up, and they want to get her, and this is extortion, and blah, 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 blah. Well, I think we got to a point where I said, look, I have $500,000, and I could come meet you anywhere you want. Do you want to meet at the Grove? I have a briefcase full of cash, and either you'll take the cash or you won't. And let's just say that I went to the farmer's market. I had people that were watching me, and they were ready to, I'm not going to say jump on the perpetrator, but they were ready to see who this person was. Needless to say, the person never showed. And the person didn't show because it turned out that the person wasn't the woman that they said it was. It came out that it was one of Kevin's boys in his circle. One of the things about fame that people don't talk about, and this is why Hollywood truly is unhinged, is that the more successful you become, you need to surround yourself with people that are your cheerleaders and friends for life that will only want to see you come up. In the particular case of this guy, he was an actor. He was promised that he would be in commercials and other productions by him, and it was along for the ride. You know, kept watching him buy all these classic sports cars and homes and jewelry and clothes and private jets and stuff. And then you get to a point where you start getting jealous. So this guy was the guy who set him up. He came out. Well, actually, I was dealing with the DA's office, and they had come to me and told me who this person was. They're the ones that told me that there was this person named J.T. Jackson, and he was behind it, and he was extorting them. And I was like, well, I don't know. Did he really go to Kevin Hart and say, give me $15 million or else? Because that's really the definition of extortion. Came through me, you know, kind of in a roundabout way, asking for the money. So long story short, he had defamed this individual, and this individual just recently had filed a suit against him, in which I believe it was settled. It was a $12 million lawsuit. I don't know if Kevin paid that, but the lawsuit is gone. Nobody talks about it. There was a joke about that. There was a joke about him wrapping his car around a fence and a telephone pole in Calabasas many years ago. Again, Kevin Hart's another guy who was a drinker. He was a partier. He got in trouble and allegedly wrecked his car and then had his assistant come and pose as he was the driver. Many people forget Kevin Hart broke his back in one of these car accidents and was touch and go for a while. Almost never got back to where he is now. So, it was ironic that they're roasting this guy as being this wonderful, he's a jolly good fellow. But at the same time, is he? I mean, look, he's a very successful comedian. He's done a lot of big movies. Is he the best guy in the world? Is he a role model for your children? I don't think so. But again, everybody's talking about the roast right now. And I did go to the roast Sunday night. Again, like I said, action-packed week. It was just one thing after another. So I go to the roast, and we show up, and, I went with my friend Richie. We went 2 years ago for the Tom Brady roast. We had gotten different access then through Jeff Ross. We had good seats, and we were around all the celebrities when we checked in and got to hobnob with a bunch of people, which was way cool. This time, I want to thank Live Nation and Chris for getting me the tickets with Richie. It was very cool. The Roots were awesome. Usher was awesome. The show, from our standpoint, production-wise, looked incredible. I didn't watch the replay on Netflix, but I hear it was wonderful. At the end of the day, a lot of the jokes just weren't hitting. Not for me. Not for me at all. And look, I'm far from politically correct, right? I'm far from being a woke individual, even though people want to classify you as woke. If you don't like Donald Trump, you must be woke. A lot of the jokes just didn't hit for me. And, if you're of my complexion, for those of you at home, I'm very white. I might hang out with brothers, but I'm very white. A lynching joke just is never funny to me. It's just not. Jokes about a dead father like Pete Davidson, okay. It wasn't a situation where it was too soon. We're talking about 2001, and many jokes have been made at Pete Davidson's father's expense. But, they started with Kevin Hart's dad, and The Rock came out and talked about him being a crackhead and this and that and having a police record. It wasn't funny to me. It might have been funny to some of you. But, a lot of the jokes that were directed that were very mean-spirited were racist, in my opinion. And I think you could do a roast, and you could be edgy, but it's one thing to pick or to make fun of. It's another thing to jab. And this wasn't a prize fight, Hinchcliffe, look, man, the empire that he and Redband built is amazing. The running joke all week with all my friends that knew them from back in the day at the Comedy Store is, man, how did their head fit into the Kia Forum? Yeah, okay, so they got bigger heads now. Look, man, they've accomplished a big thing. Kill Tony's become one of the biggest shows in the world. It's in the zeitgeist, right? It's a part of Americana right now. Whether you like Tony or you don't like Tony, he had a couple great jokes. A couple of them didn't land so well, but everybody gave him some shit about being Joe Rogan's lackey or keeping his balls warm in his mouth, talking about the politics, and helping get Trump elected, all that stuff. Again, is it funny? No, but that's the jabby stuff that went back and forth. I just didn't feel that the roast had the same cachet as Tom Brady. With Tom Brady, you have professional athletes. You got people that don't normally roast people for a living. Here we had Draymond Green, which of course is like a villain to us in Los Angeles. We hate him. He plays for the Warriors. I have no idea why the hell he was even part of the roast. But again, it was fun for those of you that watched it at home. It's getting mixed reviews. A lot of people I talked to did not find it as great as Tom Brady's roast. Me included. But again, I want to give a shout out to Jeff Ross. He was an executive producer on it. Jeff did an amazing job. The writers, I know Ian Edwards wrote on it, Greg Fitzsimmons wrote on it, Benji Aflala. These are a couple guys that I know from hanging out at the store. All capable writers. It was fun. Chelsea Handler, I think, was probably the best roaster. Pete Davidson did a great job as well. But like I said, just an absolute exhausting week, but so much fun. Where else are you going to get this kind of fun, man? I'm in Los Angeles. Live it up. Have fun.
To close it out, tell me if you were going to be roasted, who's your dream team who would be the roastees?
Oh boy.
The roast of Kevin Blatt.
So, okay, this is easy. Obviously, the close friends I have would be people like my brother. Obviously, would be one of the roasters.
Mhm.
It has to be people that know me and know how crazy I am. It would have
Mhm.
to be a couple people from back home that I grew up with, like my friend David Coet, who I'm going to see on Saturday. He's visiting. But then it's got to be people like Too Short,
Mhm.
people like Money B from Digital Underground,
Mhm.
people from the TMZ era that I worked with, all the people that ran TMZ for a while, because they knew that I was the guy that would sell a lot of stories, and I was also shameless in the way that I would go out and get a lot of these scoops.
Mhm.
My friend Santina from ABC News probably wouldn't want to roast me because she's too nice of a person. But I have people from so many different walks of life and so many different jobs. It's a really good question, Eric, because now that I'm thinking about it, there are so many people that follow me on Facebook and on Instagram that know me from the porn business, right? And they just know me from the porn business. They know me by my moniker, which
Mhm.
was the American Cannibal on GFY, which is a bulletin board post, a BBS. That's a whole other thing. But they knew me as K Bizzle in the internet business. There would be porn stars that would roast me. Maybe Houston, the porn star, would roast
Mhm.
me. Uh, None of my ex girlfriends would probably be around for that.
Or all your ex girlfriends would be around for that, would be
You
a
know,
circus.
none of them have a good sense of humor. Otherwise, they'd still be with me.
What about players ball people like musicians? Because I know, it's funny because
Oh,
I'm friends with Ice T, and one day Ice came up in conversation with you and I didn't realize he knew you and your brother as K Bizzle and D Money and really liked
right.
you guys or likes you guys.
Yeah, no, he's good
So
people.
yeah, at some point,
Um,
Ice, you're invited on this show if you see
yeah.
this, but
Who would roast me? I think Too Short
mhm,
definitely would roast me.
yeah,
Maybe
and he'd be
Snoop Dogg.
good.
You know who else I
Mhm.
get? I would get Don Magic One,
Yeah,
the bishop, the pimp.
good. Hmm.
I would get him to roast me. See, again, this would be a funny roast because
Hmm.
these are people from all different walks of life.
All right, now
Um,
if they would do it, Charlie
yeah,
Sheen, would
fuck
you
it.
want Charlie Sheen to roast you?
No, fuck it.
Okay. What about Kim Kardashian?
She doesn't know me.
But if they said, "Hey, this guy K Bizzle, Kevin Blatt,
Yeah, had your
who's
sex
been
tape.
here, watch this episode of his podcast. He called you and your mom
Right.
liars."
I mean, look, maybe Paris, not Kim,
Okay.
but Paris definitely knows who I am.
Cameron Diaz.
Nah, she's too
Okay.
nice. I met her. I met her, like I
Yeah, no,
said.
you told the story. You told the story in the show.
Yeah, no, she was very nice. I mean, there's so many people, so many ball busting friends of mine from back
Hmm.
home. Like, I, it's a really good question because how many roasters would there be? 10?
Yeah, it was usually like 10 or 12.
That's a really good question, man. I would have a very interesting, eclectic bunch roasting me. That's for sure.
Yeah,
And like I said,
definitely.
they
All
would
right.
walk. You'd have to have people from my childhood, people from college. You'd have to have people that knew me from the porn business,
Hmm.
people that know me from the gossip industry and celebrity stuff.
Hmm. So
People
so
from
let's do it this way. Let's say to the audience, if you want to suggest someone to roast Kevin, put it in the comments, and let's see. Maybe we'll put together a roast of K Bizzle.
I think Sam Tripoli would be another person that would be a
Yeah,
great
he'd be
roast.
good. Yeah,
He's
he
known
knows.
me for so
Yeah.
long, and his favorite line that he's given to me is how much I love the broken toys when it comes to the girls I date. He just loved the broken toys, KB.
Well, and also our last guest, Brett Rossi, would be a good roaster.
Again, there you go. She's somebody who knows me and is funny and would be, and she's done comedy. So yeah, Brett Rossi would be another person who would be on the
Hmm.
panel.
Maybe Stormy Daniels.
Fuck her. She's a bitch.
Nothing going on, but you feeling me. No, 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 no. No, 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 no.